Thank you so much for tuning to my show, William Wallace for America. Today's guest is someone that's going to highlight where we are losing freedoms in America, but with outside influence outside of America. All too often, I'm surprised at how many people are not aware of where we're losing our freedoms in America, let alone the distractions and the narratives that keep us from keeping our eye on that. But with me in this interview, my guest, Reggie Littlejohn, is someone who works tirelessly at doing just that outside of our country. She shines a light on it. Reggie, thank you so much for being here with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, you're on it, and while we want to talk about some new allies that President Trump is going to have in some other countries, we're going to talk about that also. But and those allies are helping us fight for freedom. That's the bottom line here. But a lot of people are not up to date on what's going on with the UN, the WEF, or the WHO, and some people just they're just now waking up after our last presidential election. More and more people, I think, are waking up to where our freedoms are being lost. But you're on that, and I'd love for you to cover that for a second.
Okay, so yeah, I would say that in terms of the globalist coup attempt to put us into a digital gulag, that there are three legs to that stool. It's the World Health Organization, the United Nations, and the World Economic Forum. And in terms of the World Health Organization, one of the things I would like to say is that President Trump has said that he is going to withdraw us from the World Health Organization, and I think that a lot of patriots are very excited about, the election of President Trump. But we can't just assume that he's just going to do this all on his own. He needs our help, and the globalists are coming at us from all kinds of different directions, and we can't just count on President Trump alone, or even President Trump with Bobby Kennedy together, or the other members of his cabinet, to try to just do this on their own. So where are we with respect to the World Health Organization? The World Health Organization passed on June 1st amendments to the international health regulations. And these amendments by themselves could start a biotech security police state. In these amendments, there were several things that are very concerning. One is that it obligates the various nations, including the United States, to surveil our own citizens. And then not only that, but to address misinformation and disinformation. So we've got the surveillance aspect of this, and then we've got censorship of misinformation and disinformation. And then you add to that, also in that document, the amended international health regulations, they've got regulations that every country in the world has to issue a health ID for every citizen in the world. And in some countries, like, for example, developing countries, it would be paper IDs. In the developed countries, such as our own, it would be digital IDs. And these digital IDs are most extremely dangerous. They're not just simply a way of tracking whether you're vaccinated, which is bad enough, because on the basis of this ID, and if you're not vaccinated, they could just say, okay, great, you're not vaccinated, so you have to stay home. There's any number of punishments they can give to people who are unvaccinated. And thank goodness, President Trump has said that he will not enforce any kind of vax mandates. But nevertheless, we don't know who's coming after President Trump.
Exactly. And that's what I've been saying a lot lately, is that, in our country, while we can relish that he won the election, it's still up to us, the people, to be more aware. And that's why I brought you on, because not enough people are aware of what we have to do to back up President Trump, to be able to give him the resources in the public opinion poll, to be able to give him the strength to be able to go after the organizations like the WHO, the WEF, and also the UN.
Right, exactly. So that, that even if we had digital IDs in the hands of somebody like President Trump, maybe nothing bad would happen, but we don't know who's going to be elected in 2028. And we don't want that infrastructure there for them, because very, very bad things can happen if it is there. So that's where the World Economic Forum comes in, which is one of the other organizations that you mentioned. That if you go onto the World Economic Forum website, or actually just do a Google search for World Economic Forum digital ID chart, what you will see is that they have a round chart that marks everything that you're going to need a digital ID in order to access. So you will need a digital ID to access healthcare, and insurance, to open a bank account, to travel, to own a communications device such as a cell phone or a computer, to vote, to pay your taxes, to participate in social media. And what that means is that if they are surveilling us, as they say want to under the World Health Organization, if we come short, they can sever us from any or all of those different aspects. Another aspect is carrying on online transactions. So basically, using your credit card to buy something online. And this is very much like the China social credit system, where they surveil people on all those different aspects of, say, so that you've got your health, your health history, your medical history, your criminal history, real time geolocation, so they know where you are, facial recognition, so they know what you look like, all your social media posts, your internet search history. Can tell a lot about what somebody's thinking about by the internet search history, your internet spending history, your bank accounts, your credit cards. And if you do things that convince them that you are not a compliant Chinese sheep, then they can punish you. Like in China, you can lose your job. Your kid will not get to go to a good school. You will not be able to travel. You will not be able to buy money or borrow money in order to buy a home or open a business. And if you keep it up, then they can sever you from your credit cards or your bank accounts. And if people think that that can't happen in North America, it already did to the Canadian truckers, when they, when they had a demonstration against vaccine mandates. The Canadian government, through the banks, cut them off from their credit cards and their bank accounts, them and their donors. And then if you keep it up in China, they'll just disappear you. And all that technology is available in the United States. We need to not let them roll out this infrastructure, because in the wrong hands, we could end up like communist China. And that's where the World Economic Forum comes in, is with this chart about everything that the digital ID is meant to do. You also asked about the United Nations. Well, the United Nations, on September 22nd, they passed something called the Pact for the Future, which will give, I mean, they passed it. It will give the United Nations the same ability to impose a biotech surveillance police state, but on the basis of complex global shocks. That's a word that they made up, okay, as opposed to pandemics or health reasons. So if there's a pandemic, if there's some kind of a health crisis or a potential pandemic, potential health crisis, the World Health Organization is going to be calling the shots. And then if it's going to be a complex global shock, the United Nations wants to play the central role in determining how the world responds. So they've got a chart on the United Nations website called Complex Global Shocks. It's in one of their policy briefs. And those complex global shocks include climate change, a pandemic, or other health emergency, which they would I assume that they would farm that out to the World Health Organization, which is an arm of the United Nations. Then they also have, if the grid goes down, if the internet goes down, if the banking system goes down, if there is a supply chain disruption, if there's an event in outer space. That's actually one of the categories. And then they've got another category called unforeseen black swan events, which is basically anything that they didn't think of. If anything, these things happen, the Secretary General of the United Nations will be able to direct the world, play the central role in determining international policy about how to handle this. And it's an emergency platform that will operationalize automatically, which means that it's already passed through the United Nations through something that they call a silence procedure, by the way, which meant that there was no public debate about this. And so it will operationalize automatically, meaning that there doesn't need to be any further vote on it. Okay, we've already voted to give them the emergency platform, and therefore they're just going to operationalize it automatically in the case of a complex global shock. So that's the update. You're on mute. You're on mute.
There we go. What, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, what's interesting to me is that they're doing all of these things with good in air quote good intentions. They convince people that it is for the greater good. So they're cloaking their evil intentions in a wrap, or they're cloaking their evil intentions in a wrapper of good intentions, if you will. And so that's what throws people off, because they say, well, we should have, a worldwide, regulation on what happens if this happens again. That's the people who aren't paying attention. Last night, I watched the premiere of a movie, A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, by Dr. James Lindsay, and
Yeah.
I met him last night, at the premiere. And I don't know if you've seen the movie or not, but all the things that you're describing were done by by dictators like Mao Zedong and Lenin. All these things that you're referring to, that the UN, the World Economic Forum, and the WHO will do to punish you, so to speak, if you don't get on board with their agenda, were done before all the technological advances that we have today. So imagine if we give the UN or the WEF or the WHO this type of power with our technological advances that we have today, how much control they'll have over us no matter what we do, which is why we need to wake up more people. What else are you working on to be able to help stop these? And then how can we inform others on what things that they can do to help stop this?
So I am in the process of launching an organization. You can see it behind my head, Anti-Globalist International.
Okay.
Anti-Globalist International. So please go to www.antiglobalist.net. www.oneword anti-globalist, no hyphen in between, just antiglobalist.net. Read the manifesto, because it's just what you and I have been talking about, and sign it, and that will put you on my newsletter list, and you will get updates about all various aspects of what's going on in the United States and internationally, and what you can do
Is that
about it.
right? Is that right? The right website?
Oh, you want me to see? Are you looking at?
Antiglobalist.com, you said?
No, antiglobalist.net, and I don't see anything on my screen. When you say, "Is that right?" Then I don't see it.
And I'm putting it up while we're talking so people can see it. Antiglobalist.net, and it should be at the bottom of on a banner.
Yes, it is. There you go.
Perfect. So anybody watching the video can go to your website right away. So
That's right.
what can people do? People can go to your site. They can see what you're doing. You're working on all three fronts with this organization, correct?
Yeah, and there's a fourth front, which is the spiritual front. I mean, I believe ultimately that this is a spiritual battle, and if you click on
Absolutely.
the picture of Joan of Arc, you'll get our take on that too. But so yeah, we are, in the natural, we are opposing the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, but also we are praying very hard for God to intervene and to give us wisdom and discernment about what the best strategy is. So
Amen. He saved us this last election. He's given us another shot, I believe, to be able to get behind the efforts of things like you're working on. And you mentioned Trump, some of the things that Trump can do and how we can help him. But Trump's not doing this by himself. I understand. And one thing you want to talk about real quick before we leave out here is that the Argentinian president is working with him on this too. How is that relationship looking?
well, I mean, so the Argentinian president, his name is Javier Milei, and
Hmm.
he's quite an interesting individual. He is not a career politician. He's actually an economist and a mathematician, and he's published like 50 papers in academic journals. And with his brilliant mind, what he has decided is that there is a globalist coup, and that the United Nations, in particular, is very dangerous if it veers off the path of its original mission, and continues on um, this globalist path. And he delivered a speech right there at the UN, saying basically, he's going to warn the nations of the dangers of the UN if it fails to fulfill its original missions. That the UN has been replaced by a supranational government of international bureaucrats. That would be the WHO, the the UN, the WEF, and that the Agenda 2030 agenda, despite being well intentioned, is nothing more than a socialist supranational government program, and that the global lockdowns in 2020 should be considered a crime against humanity. So he doesn't mince words. He just
Correct.
calls it as he sees it, and, I understand that he actually met with Trump at Mar-a-Lago, and we need more leaders like that all over the world to turn this, globalist coup around.
You know, it's almost like he is exposing what's happening on an international level with the UN, the WF, you know, and the WHO. That's like the alphabet agencies that we have to watch out on a worldwide level, like the alphabet agencies that we have to look out for on a national level here in the United States that Trump is exposing. So it's kind of like they're working in tandem. It sounds like on those, you know, air quote alphabet agencies and what they're doing to undermine freedom and liberty for all people in this world. And without people like you, Reggie, you know, I think that a lot of this would not be uncovered. You're working really hard to do that, and I really appreciate that. Do you have any final words on anything that you want to motivate people to do besides going to your website at antiglobalist.net, or anything else that we might be able to inform people on?
Please pray. Pray for me. Pray for the protection of President Trump. Pray for the protection of RFK Jr. Pray for the protection of President Millet, and for all the people who are taking a public stand against the globalists, because these guys are vicious, and we need wisdom, discernment, God's help, and God's protection.
Amen, Reggie. I really appreciate you being on my show, and I ask everybody else to please spread the word, share the interview, but most importantly, go to Reggie's website, antiglobalist.net, to see how you can be involved. It's important that we do, and pray. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much.